Only 90 people downloaded my first app. I thought that meant I wasn't good enough to be a founder. But it turns out my biggest mistake had nothing to do with traction and everything to do with how I saw myself. Hi, I'm Joanna Trojak, a product manager and a consultant helping founders create user-centric products and self-sustaining startups. I'm also the founder of Heart Renew, a self-dating app built from everything I had to learn and rebuild as a founder. In the very first episode of Founder Unfiltered, I'm taking you back into the beginning. Today, I'm going to talk about the very first mistake I did while launching my first startup. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into what I call my flag in the wind mistake, and how can you avoid making the same one. Closing my first startup was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. I had poured everything into this business, my time, my savings, my identity. In Poland, where I'm from, we have this saying that hope dies last, and I think that it really captures how I felt during those final moments. I was clinging to hope even when all the evidence was telling me that the business wasn't viable and I should close it. For a long time, I told myself everything was fine. I clung to hope like the woman from that Beckett play I studied at the university, reassuring myself that I didn't need help or change in direction, while at the same time burying myself deeper and deeper into the sand. But after months of healing and reflection, I realized that hope alone wasn't going to save my business. Let me take you back to 2020. I was young, full of ambition, naive, and visionary, but lacking the one thing that every entrepreneur needs, confidence. Initially, I wanted to create a productivity chatbot. I was convinced it would revolutionize how people manage their time. The problem was I had this broad vision for this product, but I couldn't articulate exactly how it would work or what specific problem it would solve. My explanations were vague, things like it'll help people manage their time better, but I had no concrete plan for implementation. And I think that was one of the first mistakes I did. I wasn't trying to solve a concrete problem. I was just inventing it. I did a small MVP in Dialogflow, but it didn't do anything concrete. It was just a few pre-written scenarios I came up with that didn't make much sense. It wasn't anything like ChatGPT. When the pandemic hit, like many founders, I pivoted. I shifted focus to addressing loneliness during lockdowns, thinking that would be more relevant. And in a way, I was right. Loneliness is an important problem and it is worth solving. But even with this new direction, my ideas remained fuzzy and unfocused. People were seeing that clearly, and because of that, I wasn't someone worth investing in. I remember that once I was in a pitching competition presenting my broad vision for this startup, and the judge, a woman from Microsoft, destroyed my weak presentation. It wasn't very nice, and I still remember when she basically said that I shouldn't be in this competition and someone like me shouldn't create something like I envisioned, something so soft, psychologically based, because I don't have an expertise in that field. So what am I doing here? In a way, she was right because I wasn't ready for that competition. This is something I tell myself now after months of healing, but at that time, my self-worth was practically non-existent. I continued my journey, but that lack of confidence stayed with me and I became a flag on the wind. I was constantly swaying based on whatever feedback or advice I received. I saw everyone as more experienced and with more expertise, so I trusted their opinions over my own intuition. To be honest, I think I was expecting that they will tell me what my product should be. It's natural to seek advice, especially when you're just starting. But there's a difference between learning from others and asking them for help and letting their opinions completely override vision. According to a CB Insight study where they analyzed 101 startups and their reasons for failure, 13% failed due to a lack of focus or clear business direction, making it one of the top 10 reasons for startup failure. Additionally, a Harvard Business School study that tracked over 2,000 startups found that 65% of startup failures were due to management problems, including inconsistent decision-making and lack of clear direction. I was definitely part of those statistics. My mental health started to suffer as I realized I was no longer in control of my own business. Research by Francesca Gino found that when entrepreneurs seek excessive external validation, they experience a 30% decrease in creative problem-solving ability. Her study of 124 startups showed that founders who constantly sought approval made 40% fewer innovative decisions. There's also this one thing that also contributed in my visible lack of confidence and self-belief. You probably know this myth or narrative. I'm talking about the 20-something college dropout who codes in their dorm room and becomes a billionaire before they turn 30. You know, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Evan Spiegel, the founders who seem to have figured it all out while they were still in high school. This narrative is everywhere in startup culture, and to be honest, it's incredibly toxic. What we don't see in those success stories are the privileges, connections, support systems, and sheer luck that often played crucial role in those overnight success stories. Sometimes I say that you can become an overnight success, but it takes over 1,000 nights to become it. We don't hear about those thousands of young founders who tried and failed because they lacked experience, mentorship, or simply picked the wrong problem to solve. You don't hear about those stories, which I'm trying to change with my podcast and being so honest about my journey. When I started my business at 26, I felt constant pressure to succeed quickly. I thought if I don't make it a bit big by 30, I'm already behind. This pressure made me rush decisions, pivot too quickly, and seek validation from others instead of trusting my own process and timeline. I felt like an imposter because I wasn't achieving rapid growth or securing massive funding rounds like the founders I read about in TechCrunch. What I've realized now is that experience matters. The data actually backs this up. The average age of successful startup founder is not 20, it's around 45. All the founders, according to the research from the National Bureau of Economic Research, typically have more industry knowledge, professional networks, and life experience to draw upon when facing challenges. So knowing that now I can relax and just enjoy myself. Success will come on its own timeline, and now it is even more likely because I'm older and more experienced. So I don't have to succeed quickly. I still have more time because I'm only 32. But this isn't just about age. It's about giving yourself permission to learn and grow at your own pace. Some people are ready to be successful founders at 20, and that's absolutely okay. Others at 30, and it's okay too. Others at 40 or 60, and it's also okay. What matters is not when you start, but that you're honest about where you are in your learning journey and what supports you need. Had I acknowledged my inexperience and sought proper mentorships in my first startup, instead of trying to appear like I had everything figured out, because in a way I was actually trying to emulate this successful founder persona and I was actually just posturing, I might have avoided becoming the flag in the wind. I might have built something sustainable at my own pace, rather than chasing the unrealistic timeline that startup mythology had planted in my mind. And, despite the fact that I'm building again and I'm much smarter, I still talk to experts, but instead of just asking them to tell me what should I do, I tell them what I'm actually building. Because my vision became more concrete, I know what are the basic features of my new application, Hard Renew. I build them on my own. Now, I just asked them, you see, I have this app and I was wondering how to make sure users are returning to it. I have some ideas how to do that, but what do you actually think? So if you're listening to this episode and feeling the pressure to conform to this young founder stereotype, I want you to take a deep breath and release yourself from this burden. Your timeline is your own. Success comes at different ages and through different paths. Focus on building skills, gaining experience, and solving real problems, not on meeting arbitrary age milestone created by cherry-picked success stories. And let me share something with you. I met some of those founders who were like 25 before 25 or 30 before 30. And I've talked to them, and frankly speaking, some of them are not that impressive as they are portrayed in those Forbes articles. So there you go. It's just a PR. It doesn't really matter. So what would I do differently now? What lessons can you take from my experience? The biggest lessons I learned is to trust my gut. It is important to seek advice and learn from others, as I said. But at the end of the day, you're the one steering the ship. If an idea doesn't feel right, you need to have the confidence to say no and just saying you don't do that anymore. To be honest, saying no is still something I struggle with, but I'm trying to improve. I think confidence comes from starting small and seeing results. Instead of trying to build massive product right now, I could have tested my original chatbot idea on a small scale, gathered feedback, or refined it if it was still a viable idea. Or I would just wait for a new idea to hit me and try with that. That way, if it didn't work, and as obviously no, it didn't, I wouldn't have invested too much time or money. It's okay to start small and grow incrementally. Lean Startup by Eric Rice explains this concept perfectly. The methodology is all about building a minimal viable product, testing with real users, learning from the feedback, and then iterating. Studies show startups using this approach have 60% higher success rates than those using traditional business planning. They also reduce their time to market by 50%. Had I followed this approach from the get-go, I would have discovered much sooner whether my ideas had potential. My second piece of advice is that clarity is key. Vague ideas get vague results. I should have spent more time clearly defining my vision, trying to discover it, as well as trying to discover my product and my goals. The more specific you are, the easier it is to create a roadmap for success, because you clearly know where you are going. With a clear vision, I would have known exactly who to work with, how to bring my ideas to life, and what success would look like. If you're wondering about the practical steps to test your business idea before fully committing, one thing that I'm doing differently now is using social media to test ideas. Basically, I'm setting up an Instagram account around different topics I'm interested in pursuing as startups. I set up an account, post daily, and gauge the response from my audience. It takes time, but this gives me a feel for what resonates before I invest significant resources. And here's the other perk. You already have some audience around the topic. So later on, when you are building a product, you can actually use it. About 2 months ago, I also started using LinkedIn as a testing ground. I took a course by Lara Costa on personal branding and started a 30-day posting challenge to share my ideas. The feedback I've received through DMs and comments had been invaluable. People tell me when an idea interests them and send messages of encouragement for me to keep going. Social media really does provide a free testing ground for ideas. And with tools like ChatGPT, you can quickly generate content with the right prompts and make adjustments based on what resonates with your audience. It's an effective way to avoid wasting time on something that won't work. I also want to talk about the emotional toll of closing a startup, which is something we don't discuss enough in the entrepreneurial community. For me, it felt like a grief. I was mourning not just the business, but also the vision of the future I had built around it. I was also grieving the past version of myself, someone I used to be when I ventured into the startup, someone who wasn't confident, wasn't really experienced. What helped me was giving myself permission to feel those emotions without judgment. I took time off to process everything. I journaled, I spoke with other founders who had been through similar experiences, and gradually I started to reframe the experience not as a failure, but as a valuable learning opportunity. Now I am actually grateful for this whole experience because it made me stronger and a better version of myself. It was a really painful experience, but after all of that, I'm grateful and it brought enormous growth. Remember that closing a startup, it doesn't make you a failure as a founder. Some of the most successful business people in the world have had multiple failed ventures before finding the success. What matters is what you take away from this experience and how you apply those lessons moving forward. As we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with a final thought. Starting a business is like learning to ride a bike. You're going to wobble, you will fall a few times, but each attempt teaches you something valuable about balance and momentum. 2 years after closing my first startup, I'm grateful for the experience, especially because it helped me becoming a more confident person, a better version of myself. And I'm grateful for all the parts, those things that were great when I had some success, but I am also grateful for the painful parts. I've learned to trust my instinct, to be clear about my vision, and to test my ideas before going all in. These lessons have made me a stronger entrepreneur and will serve me well in my future. In a way, I am better because I failed. And I am better than this young founder I was trying to imagine myself to be. Because I'm a founder that survived and decided to do startup again. For those of you currently running startups or thinking about launching one, remember, don't be a flag in the wind. Stand firm in your vision while remaining open to strategic pivots based on real data and feedback. Start small, test often, and always trust your gut. In the next episode, I dive into the second big mistake I made in my first startup journey, one that had just as much impact on my mental health as this one. Until then, keep dreaming, keep building, and remember that every setback is just setting you up for the comeback. I am Jonna Trojak, and this is Founder Unfiltered. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch up you next time.